What you are looking at will soon be one of the most affordable electric SUV options in Australia. And I say one of because EV prices are fluctuating so quickly. Something will have no doubt changed by the time I finish this sentence, but the point is it will be cheap. It's the Leapmotor B10, little brother to the C10 that we already have in market, and the latest offering from the Stellantis-backed Chinese player. So what are you going to get? Well, it'll arrive in two drive-away trim levels. That starts with the Style, which is $38,990, then steps up to this, the Design, which is $41,990. In typical Chinese fashion, both are ferociously well equipped, but there is one potential drawback. Stick around for a moment, I'll tell you exactly what that is. It all kicks off with the Style, in which you're really not very much spend, earns you 18-inch alloy wheels, LED lighting, a glass roof with a sunshade and pop-out door handles. Inside there's a 14.6-inch central screen, an 8.8-inch digital dashboard, a 6-speaker stereo, a wireless charging pad and a built-in dash cam. Then there's the Design or long range, which gets a bigger battery and a better driving range. It also adds fake leather seats, which are heated and cooled up front, a heated steering wheel, a LED light bar at the rear and automatic wipers. There's also a 12-speaker stereo, a powered tailgate and ambient interior lighting at this level too. That's a lot of extra driving and extra stuff for $3,000, and so I know which one I'd be choosing when this thing arrives later this year. Now, both share the same electric motor. It produces 160 kilowatts and 240 newton meters and powers the rear tires. That means a sprint to 100 kilometers an hour in around 8 seconds and a top speed of 170 kilometers an hour. But the big change is in the battery size. The cheapest B10 model gets a 56.2 kilowatt hour LFP battery, good for a claimed 361 kilometers on the WLTP cycle. The Design, though, ups that to 67.1 kilowatt hours, which ups the range to 434 kilometers. There's also a difference when it comes to DC charging, with the smaller battery set up for 140 kilowatts, while the bigger battery gets up to 168 kilowatts. That means going from 30 to 80% in around 20 minutes. When it comes to AC charging, i.e. plugging in at home, it's set up for 11 kilowatts. Now the B10 stretches 4.5 meters in length, 1.8 meters in width and 1.6 meters in height, there or thereabouts. There's a few millimeters different there. And the point the brand says is to make a small SUV that feels very big on the inside. And I know that sounds a bit like marketing guff, but the reality is I'm sitting behind roughly my own driving position. I'm 175 centimeters and I've got plenty of knee room and plenty of headroom too. And in fact, you could really, thanks to the flat floor, sort of stretch out into any of the seats. It really is a pretty comfortable way to get around. Now, when it comes to the boot, you'll find 430 litres there with the rear seats in place. And that's not bad. It's actually only a little bit less than some mid-size SUVs. Now, it is a clean and modern feeling space here in the cabin of the B10. And I've got to say, it doesn't feel like a cheapy entry-level EV. It all looks really nice. Part of that is this big screen that takes pride of place in the center of the dash here. But I've got to say, it is a tiny bit fiddly. All of the car's key functions are controlled through the screen, so you do spend a bit of time digging through menus, but I've got to say, it looks nice, as does the rest of the detailing in the dash. The only problem is, while it looks really great, it doesn't feel all that flash. All of this stuff is, after all, just hard plastics. Now, the promise here is a Chinese car that doesn't drive like a Chinese car. The B10 was developed with Stellantis. It was tested at the Bolocco Proving Ground, and they say that they want to make it feel as European as possible in terms of its ride quality and comfort. It's also rear-wheel drive, it has perfect weight distribution, and all of that promises to make it feel a little bit sportier. And I say sportier because it does feel sportier than the C10, but it never feels like an out-and-out performance car. In fact, the acceleration, even though it clips 100 kilometers an hour in 8 seconds, is never that sort of push you back in your seat stuff. Instead, it's just a steady flow of smooth, constant power that's so typical of electric vehicles now. Now, when they say European, I take that to mean a flatter, firmer ride quality, as opposed to that sort of floaty, willowy suspension that's sometimes typical of new Chinese products. And it does feel as though they've ironed out a lot of that in this vehicle. One word of warning, the roads here in Europe are billiard table smooth, so they're not really an indication of how it's going to perform on Australia's broken road surfaces, but I've found it to feel pretty comfortable, pretty competent, and pretty connected to the road below the tyres. I really do like it more than the C10. In fact, we even took this up some sort of twisting mountain roads yesterday and it handled itself pretty well. Again, it's not going to be an out-and-out performance car, but there's not a huge amount of body roll. There was enough grip from the tyres and it all felt pretty competent and pretty composed. But there are some downsides. I don't know if you can hear that chiming in the background, but the ADAS systems in this car are diabolical. Leapmotor says they've improved them dramatically from the first generation C10, which had its own over-the-air updates to improve them in that car. But I still find them utterly unlivable, and I assure you the first thing you'll be doing is turning them all off. The other quirk is this screen behind the steering wheel. It's positioned in such a way that every time you turn the wheel, it covers each edge of the screen. The only issue is those edges of the screen are the only things that give you any relevant information. The left is your driving speed, the right is things like your navigation instructions. The middle is just a picture of the car on the road, which serves really no purpose at all. So I don't really understand why we have this long, wide screen, but only tiny parts of it are relevant, and those tiny parts are constantly covered up by the wheel. Now, the other thing that might hold customers back is the driving range. In the lower battery model, it starts with a 3, and we all know that WLTP testing is kind of a best case scenario. You're unlikely to actually achieve that in the real world, which means that model is really going to be relegated to being a city car rather than a long distance tourer. And the same is also true of the bigger battery, to be honest. 400 plus Ks will likely drop to 300 and something in the real world. Again, you're not going to be traveling across the state in it. But it is ferociously good value at $38,990 or $41,990 drive away. That presents really good buying. There is a ton of equipment in this car, and at no stage does it feel like a cheap model. Everything's sort of nicely put together. Yes, some of the materials are a bit hard and scratchy, but it doesn't feel like some stripped back offering. Provided, of course, you can put up with the safety systems, which I can't. In that case, learn how to turn them off and learn it quickly. So in short, the B10 feels like another step in the right direction for Leapmotor. I like it better than their first car, and it shows things are moving in the right way for them. This would make smart city buying for those looking for a small electric SUV.